This video is going to be about the topic of storytelling in street photography. So adding a storytelling element is both one of the most difficult things, but also one of the most meaningful things you can do to improve your street photography. I want to begin this video by sharing a story that really taught me these lessons. And then in the later part of the video, we're also going to go into more practical tips. So let me take you back to a magical time in 2018, back when Instagram wasn't yet TikTok, back when you could just hop on a plane and land in Tokyo, back when we had entirely different, meaningless problems to worry about. It was springtime in Tokyo, which is truly one of the best times to experience one of the best, most beautiful cities in the world. I feel very lucky to have been able to make this trip, especially now when it's literally impossible. And I made this trip for one purpose, to take photos every single day. Here's some of them. And it was really an amazing trip. The cherry blossoms were blooming and the neon lights were shining at night. These were the main things that I was paying attention to on this trip. But interestingly, one of the best photos I took on the entire year, and still one of my best, most liked photos on Instagram, is this photo that I took on the Ginza Line train. They have these cool yellow cars that I wanted to take photos of, and then kind of like a blind monkey, I happened to catch a moment that is kind of like a romantic comedy poster with a little bit of a comic relief in the background that we can all relate to, and also a little bit of intrigue because it's not entirely clear if this love at first sight moment is actually authentic or if it's just an illusion and the people are actually looking past each other. But I think the reason that this photo made me realize I'd done something good is not the amount of likes that it got on social media, but it's the type of comments that people would leave under this photo. Because usually you get comments like sick tones or fire or cool photo or shit photo, please kill yourself. That kind of thing. Generally, not very meaningful comments, not very long. They're always appreciated. I mean, 3 out of the 4 times they're appreciated. But, not much substance. It is Instagram after all. But under this photo, I would get comments that were much more meaningful. This photo clearly stimulated the imaginations of people. They appreciated the moment, or they liked to speculate what was going on. Anyway, it made me understand that photos that had a storytelling element would be much more powerful than photos that simply looked cool. And the ultimate photos, the best photos, would probably have aesthetics, but also some sort of a storytelling element or intrigue in the photo. And after I had this realization, I started looking at street photography in an entirely different kind of way. I started actually paying attention to the storytelling element, and I started thinking about how to take photos that actually had a story in them instead of just relying on blind luck. So I think step 1 is simply acknowledging that a storytelling element can really take your photography to the next level. It took me a couple of years to realize that, and had I not taken this photo, I probably wouldn't have realized it even at that point. So now let's talk about the ways you can actually add a storytelling element into your photography. I think the most obvious way is to capture the so-called decisive moment, the moment that tells the story. And in order to learn how to do that, you have to learn how to anticipate scenes that are unfolding in front of you, and then kind of position yourself in advance so that you can catch the moment when it happens. Live in the moment is great advice if you want to live a happy life, but it's not necessarily great advice if you want to be good at street photography. So how important is happiness really? Isn't it more important to be good at photography? Because if you're living in the moment when you're taking photos, you're reacting, you're one step behind, and even if you happen to catch the moment because you're super fast at focusing, there's a good chance that the photo is not very well composed because you're simply reacting to what is happening, so you have little control over the other visual elements of the photo. But if you live in the future and you anticipate scenes, you can have a chance to combine both the moment with a angle or a composition that looks good. And once you kind of make the shift in thinking, you start looking for clues in the environment, you start anticipating scenes, you start living in the future. And hopefully you don't live in the future in your normal life, because it may lead to crippling depression. But hey, sometimes crippling depression makes you better at making really moody photos, so it's not all bad. Way number 2 to add a storytelling element is kind of a bullshit way, to be honest. Is because instead of literally having a story in the photo, we actually get the viewer to paint the story in their own mind. And in order to do that, we do it by removing stuff from the photo. We do it by obstructing the subject. This is the saw lighter method. So the way to do this is by taking photos that are mysterious, that don't entirely tell the full story directly. And the way to compose photos like this is shooting through, obstructive surfaces like rainy windows or umbrellas, or leaving stuff out of the frame that would make things obvious if they were included, but when they're not included, it makes the viewer think. So your mission is to make the person looking at the photos think and kind of form their own story. And one more method to add a storytelling element is to start thinking of photography not as a series of single photos, but as a series of photos that you can combine either into a photo series or into a collage. Photo series are obviously the most classical way to do this. It is a way to combine a photo book or an exhibition or just a series on your website. All of these photos are going to have some sort of a common theme, whether it's a location or something very specific. But just the fact that all of the photos have a theme make the entire series more interesting, and therefore the theme itself becomes the story. But another way you can do photo series and add a storytelling element is to think of photos as stills from a movie and then combine those photos into a collage. That's what I've been doing in social media recently. I think of photos as kind of a 4-frame movie or 3-frame movie, and you take different kind of angles of a scene or different kind of characters from one place and combine them in a way that looks visually pleasing, and it also kind of creates almost like a very minimal movie that has some sort of a common theme in it. And the final tip is, instead of simply including a storytelling element, you want to combine all of these elements for the ultimate photo. Now, of course, not every photo has to be the ultimate photo. Not every photo has to have a story, but your best photos are likely to be ones that have at least a combination of good aesthetics and good storytelling, and probably also some type of intrigue added into them. That is, of course, not necessary, but it can improve the quality of your photos, at least subjectively, in my opinion. And I think one of the reasons that the initial photo that I took went kind of viral is because it combines decent composition with a storytelling element with a little bit of intrigue as well. So it generates, buzz and comments, and people look at it for more than just 1 second because there's a lot of things going on here, but it also just looks well composed. So it catches people's attention initially. To sum it up, I think execution of adding the storytelling element is still the most difficult part, but I think step one is simply starting to pay attention. And once you start to pay attention, the world kind of opens up to you and you start coming up with ways to implement this. And then once you take photos enough times, once you go out enough times, eventually things will start falling into place, and hopefully you'll be able to catch some interesting stories and kind of get to the next level in your street photography. That is all for today. Thank you very much for watching. One of the ways you can support me is by sharing this video on Twitter or with your family and friends. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't, like the video, leave me a comment. See you in the next one. Thank you very much for watching.